This is part 2 of the video. As I remind my students in class, if you have put your pencil lead out this far, in order to not break it, make sure to put it back into the pencil, because we're going to be holding and drawing darker now. And I'll zoom in on occasion to show the details, but all you're going to do is match up with the original cartoon and start going around the character to add the details. Again, if you're interested in drawing it exactly like the character here, note that I did the bone too big here on the cheekbone, so I'm just going to alter it slightly because it's quite a bit smaller than I've drawn it. And it also doesn't go that high on his head. It's a little more subtle than the way I originally drew it. Then I'm going to bring this line all the way around here. I'm going to draw in his teeth. And again, I'm going to change these up just a little bit too, because I didn't leave enough space over here. It's okay to make these corrections when you're first learning how to draw any new character. Also notice that it's rounded here, and I had it pretty square, so I'm going to round it here a little bit and then bring it up directly underneath at the base of his skull. Any mistakes that you make will be fixed in the last part of this drawing, which is to make the dark, thick outlines around everything. So next I'm going to draw this part, which goes underneath his chin and over to his shoulder. That's part of his scarf. Then I'm going to take the backbone, the spine that comes out of his skull, and draw it around like this. I'm noting that it's a little bit thinner than I had originally drawn it. So I'm going to ignore that line and then finish it here. Then I can draw this line back over here, and at a later point I'm going to darken in these areas. He only has 4 teeth, so I'm going to do 2 lines here and another one here. And I'm not super concerned that I'm not drawing exactly what I originally plotted out, because I'm making corrections as I go. Corrections to make it look a little bit more like the original drawing. A couple of lines here on his spine to show that it's his backbone. And I'm going to draw the back of his scarf over here to his shoulder. On the other side, right in the middle of where his mouth is, the scarf comes around here and dips down like this. It's a little bit shaped differently than I originally did, so I'm just going to make that correction as I go. And then bring this line all the way around over here to his shoulder. You can also draw in this fold here that comes around here. And this one here. The better you get at doing this, because you're going to draw it a bunch of times, the more it'll look like the original. But again, I'm not super concerned at this point that it looks exactly like the original. If I were working for the video game company that draws this character, I would draw it exactly the way the original artist drew it. Again, I'm going to draw this little ring here, which I didn't draw on the original one, but I'm going to make sure to put it in here because it is part of his costume or his outfit. And I'm going to take this line down here and draw it right to here. Bring this one down and around. And again, here's where I'm making corrections and learning about the character, how it's drawn. This little nub of this large bone here goes into his arm right here where his elbow would be. Then I'm going to draw this down to where his wrist is on both sides. Draw the top of his glove, and then finish up these two lines here. And then draw this round part here for his glove, where his fingers go, all the way around. The more you draw, the more confident you'll get. I'm actually drawing here, but oftentimes I'm moving my eye back and forth to see where the shapes are. Since I always want to draw the things that are in front, and since my drawing is overlapping his shoulder here, you're not going to see this part of his shoulder because of the way I've drawn it. Over here you can see there's a little bit of space in here. Again, I'm not going to be super concerned about that. I'm only concerned with how the construction of this character is. I can work on the details later. So I'm going to go around here. This is the bottom of his thumb. Goes up into his hand here and to the top of his thumb. And then his glove is a really interesting glove. It hides all of his fingers, but it's really long. You can see this one over here. Not quite sure why that is. Not important at this point. This is the palm of his hand, underneath his fingers. Then I can draw these two bones coming down here again. It's a little more prominent down here at the bottom, unlike this one. His elbow's very evident here. And then I'm just going to draw these lines here. It almost looks like a very skinny football in here. Then I'm going to draw the bottom and back of his elbow, because all of these shapes are important for when you start changing the position of the character, which we will do as part of our quiz for this particular week of drawing. The quiz includes changing the position that the character was drawn in originally. That'll be the third video in this series. So I'm going to draw this. And those are his two shoulders. Then I'll draw his chest in here. His chest is actually sticking out in front of this shoulder. Normally I would probably have to draw it over here. But since I've already darkened this in, I'm not going to worry about that detail at this point. I'm just going to draw it from right here. And then continue it around. And I'm going to draw this ring down here that's underneath his suit or his chest. Not sure if this is armor or whatever. I've never played this game, so I'm not familiar with the character at all. This badge looking object is sort of curved. I've actually curved it more than it really is, but again, I'm not super concerned with that. And these are the medals or the ribbons that he's gotten as part of his outfit. I'm guessing that that's what that is. That's what it reminds me of. When my dad was in the Army, he wore these on his uniform. Again, assuming that that's what that is. So now I'm going to draw from here to here, where his hip is. Bring it around. Since this overlaps here, I'm going to draw this one in front, and then draw this like this. And again, on mine, I put the glove a little too far over, so it overlaps a little bit more. If you want to try and draw it more like this, that would be fine. But again, not super concerned. You'll hear me say that over and over again. Until we get to the point where we're being paid to draw this character, we're just going to draw it in my style. And while I'm talking about that style, one thing that you'll notice if you've ever seen a cartoonist draw someone else's cartoon, they have a thing actually coming up in April. Not sure if they still do it or not, but back in the old days, when I was a kid, and especially in college, cartoonists that are in the newspaper on April Fool's Day oftentimes would draw one another's cartoons. You'll have to check and see if your family gets a newspaper, if in fact they still do that. But the fun thing about that is that you can see how a different cartoonist draws someone else's cartoon. When I was a kid, I actually learned how to draw by drawing images or pictures from the funny pages from the comics, and I tried to get them exactly like I saw them in the comics, but it never turned out exactly right. So these people who are professionals are drawing one another's cartoons, and if you hold them up side by side with the original cartoon characters' work, you'll notice that it doesn't look exactly the same. It's very close, but it doesn't look exactly the same. It's because everyone has a slightly different style. So if your character doesn't look exactly like mine or the original, don't be concerned about that. Again, you'll hear me say it over and over again. I'm only concerned that you're using the construction method to draw your cartoons so that you can later draw them in a different shape, and we're actually going to do that on this guy. So since I missed where his patterns were on his shoe last time, I'm going to go ahead and start it here instead and make him a little bit smaller so that it can look more like his actual outfit. And you'll notice, since this foot's turned a little bit, you can actually see this bump here, which goes slightly outside where the edge of his shoe goes. So go ahead and add those bumps, and then do the same thing here. His foot's turned this way on this shoe, so you can see the entire shape of these rectangles patterned on his shoes, or on the front of his boot. So that's basically all the details. There is one other thing I just noticed. You notice his spine here that comes from his chest down into his waist or his hips. There's a lot more space in between here. That's something that I can fix when I redraw this character another time. But for now, just knowing that his spine comes down through here and connects to his hips from his skull is plenty. That's fine. So since I don't want these videos to go too long, I'm going to go ahead and end this one now, and then I'm going to show you how to darken in the lines so that it looks more like this on the next video.